The D-backs feast or famine offense was completely famished as they lost game 2 to the Cincinnati Reds. So let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You're listening to who? The always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas. I'm a multimedia journalist and a graphic designer. So please go check out my website, millardthomas24.myportfolio.com. On there you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. From brakes to exhaust kits and beyond, eBay Motors has over 122 million parts to keep your ride or die alive. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to bring home that big win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers. On today's Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, we'll talk about the D-backs offense once again. No showing. I have more tough questions that we need to ask the D-backs. Then we'll end the pod with a little preview of Brandon Pfaadt versus Andrew Abbott in the series finale. But before we get to any of that, thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I can do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free. It's available on all platforms. So please continue to tell your friends. And one of those platforms is YouTube. Our goal is to hit 2,000 subs by the All-Star break. So please hit subscribe to Locked On Diamondbacks on YouTube. But now let's get into the podcast. Let's talk about this game 2 loss for the Arizona Diamondbacks to the Cincinnati Reds, who they've been beating up on a lot the last couple weeks. I believe they had a little 4-game winning streak going against the Cincinnati Reds. So obviously the Reds were due to finally win one against the D-backs. But the main reason why I thought the D-backs were going to win game number 2 is because of a little trend that the D-backs have done all season. Until this game 2 against the Reds, the D-backs were undefeated this year on their Tuesday games. So this was the first loss all season on a Tuesday for the D-backs. So devastating to see that trend end for the D-backs. But what was more devastating was watching this feast or famine offense, who we've seen go off, get nuclear when they're facing sweeps. But middle of the series, when the D-backs have a chance to win the series, this feast or famine offense goes absolutely cold. They have 6 hits total, 1 walk, and 7 strikeouts. And of course, we'll get to their issues with runners in scoring position, because I don't like to do the exercise of like, let's look at the box score and let's do a podcast on that. I think that's too easy. Anyone can read a box score and do a pod on it. But this is one of those podcasts where all you have to do is just look at the box score, just look at the offense, look at the pitching, and it's not that hard to see why the D-backs lost. Corbin Carroll, the best Diamondback player, has been absolutely horrendous this season. No one knows why. We think there's been issues to his swing. We think there's some lingering shoulder problems. At the end of the day, it feels more mental than anything with Corbin Carroll. A lot of times he swings at the right pitches he's supposed to be swinging at, but the hard contact is not there. The quality contact is not there. He's popping up a ton of pitches, slow grounders. This version of a Corbin Carroll is not good at all. This is not why the D-backs gave him that massive extension before his rookie season, because the version that we're seeing right now from Corbin Carroll, it is not even looking like a major leaguer. Yes, he still has all the speed in the world, but he went over 4 tonight, and his slash line now in the season is 193, 284, 255. At some point, you have to look in the mirror and you have to say, Corbin Carroll is just not a good major leaguer right now. And I don't know if this D-backs team is ever going to be good if Corbin Carroll doesn't turn it around. You also had your cleanup hitter, Christian Walker. He went 0 for 4 tonight. No walks. Don't like to see that. The guy after him, Lourdes Gurriel, he went 0 for 4. He had 2 strikeouts as well. When the guys in the middle and the top of your lineup do absolutely nothing for you offensively, it's going to be It's going to be hard to sequence together hits and put some crooked numbers on the board. Like that is going to be tough to do if the pillars of your lineup, the Carrolls, the Walkers, the Gurriels don't do much. Blaze, I love him. He had a big knock tonight. He was one of the only players that showed up tonight. But outside of him, Jock Peterson, who we love, he was 1 for 4 with 2 Ks. Eugenio Suarez, 1 hit. Jake McCarthy, 1 hit. Like all these guys did a little bit of something, but 1 for 4 with a couple strikeouts is not going to do much, especially if that big hit is not coming through with a runner in scoring position. And the saddest part is the best D-backs player over the last few games has been Kevin Newman, who I think it's like 4 straight games now with multiple hits, like 2 for 2 again tonight. Kevin Newman has been on fire recently. He was the man of the night in game one, coming through with the big walk-off hit, and he continued his brilliance tonight. But overall, the entire offense, they all need to take a page out of Kevin Newman's book because he's the only one swinging the bat well right now. And then it wasn't just the offense tonight. Slade Ciccone had a very nice start last time against the Cincinnati Reds, looked very good against that team. But tonight, the Reds seemed like they took that scouting report from that last start against Slade and said, you know what? Everything that he did correctly last time, everything that he threw at us and we couldn't hit, we're just going to fix that tonight. We're going to lay off on the pitches we couldn't hit last time. We're going to get more aggressive on the pitches we didn't swing at last time. And for Slade, 7 hits, 6 earned runs, and a home run allowed. He did not have his best stuff. Now, the bullpen didn't exactly help him out either because Logan Allen came in right after that. And all those inherited runners ended up scoring as well. He gives up 5 hits, takes no dings to his ERA, but not exactly a good outing for him either. When we look at Slade by the numbers, the pitch that really didn't work for him in this game was that slider, which had an exit velocity of 106.6 miles per hour. So Slade didn't have his best stuff tonight. I still like him a lot. I still think he's worthy of being in this rotation as a spot starter. Yes, he might be up and down at times because this is not a guy who is supposed to be an every fifth day starter for the D-backs. This is a guy who is supposed to be a long reliever, make some spot starts when someone is injured like he's doing right now. He's not expected to be a guy pitching in that number 5 role for the whole season. But what he's done this year for the D-backs, I think he's been fine. I think he's been able to hold it down. Obviously, this was not his best start, but when you go against the same team twice in like a 1 week span, I'm not going to be totally surprised if the second time through they have your number a little bit more. And so for Slade Ciccone, not his best day, but I think he should just go and shake it off. And I think he'll be fine for his next outing. But for the D-backs, the big issue that they do have right now is not their starting pitching. Yes, their bullpen has been a problem, but their offense, more than anything, 1 for 6 with runners in scoring position. And the one hit that they had was a big 2-out knock by Blaze Alexander. And how often can you count on those type of situations getting clutched out by D-backs hitter this season? Runners in scoring position, 2 outs, probably not too many. So moving forward, it's the offense that I'm putting the onus and the pressure on because I think the offense right now is the biggest problem for this D-backs team. The feast or famine offense has not been good enough the last few weeks, and it needs a change. It needs an upgrade. It needs something because whatever the D-backs are doing right now is not working, and the offense is not good enough if this D-backs team wants to turn around their season. Now, I got some more tough questions that I want to ask you guys because I love that segment yesterday. So, in segment number 2, get ready for more tough questions to ask the D-backs. Hey, but if you're looking for parts for your car, the best place you need to go then is eBay Motors because passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit only available to U.S. customers. All right. Let's get back into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. If you like the show, please follow me on Twitter at CareerThomas24 for my personal account, or look up Locked On Diamondbacks, both Twitter and Instagram for the podcast handle. And also follow my personal Instagram account, Millard.Thomas123. I'm always at a Dbacks game, so also follow me on there for more just stuff about me and following the Arizona Diamondbacks and going to games this season. But now let's get back to the podcast. And yesterday, excuse me, we didn't listen to the podcast. We did a whole segment on tough questions that we need to ask the D-backs, and probably questions D-backs need to ask themselves. And I think I want to do that segment one more time because I had so much fun with it yesterday, and we got a lot of good engagement in the comment section on YouTube. So let's run it one more time. The first question I want to ask: what if this is the 2024 Corbin Carroll? What if nothing changes with Corbin and this is the player that we get for the rest of the season? What does it mean for the D-backs this season? Moving on, and what does it mean for Corbin Carroll's career? Because a guy of his stature, coming off the season that he had last year, so many expectations for Corbin Carroll entering the year. And you want to know how much of his struggles this year has been weighing expectations versus weighing some of the potential shoulder issues versus maybe changes to his swing. Like, there's so many variables as to why Corbin Carroll has struggled this year. But the number one thing about Corbin Carroll struggles this year is it has affected this entire D-backs team. And you can see without elite Corbin Carroll, this offense does not have that. It does not have that snap to it. You're missing that bat speed from Corbin Carroll. You're missing the opposite field over the fence power. You're missing him constantly getting on base and putting pressure on those opposing pitchers. We talked about how D-backs base running was so important for them last year, creating chaos, creating havoc, and Corbin Carroll's 54 stolen bases contributed a lot to that, but also just Corbin Carroll. The fact that anytime he puts the ball in play, you know he can leg it out for a single. Then once he gets on base, how often did opposing pitchers have to disengage and throw over to first, or if he was on second, have to look over their shoulder and then look back to the batter? Like, Corbin Carroll, just his presence created so many opportunities for this D-backs team and their offense, and that is what has been missing this year. The base running, the chaos. Corbin Carroll, he has not been able to get himself on base enough, and because of that, he has not been able to put pressure on these opposing pitchers with his legs. And then also, we're just missing his bat in the lineup. The ability to start the game off with a double, start the game off with a home run, get on base to start the game. We're missing all of that from Corbin Carroll. All of his offense has just disappeared this year. And moving forward, I need to know if this is a 1-year fluke of Corbin Carroll. Was this the fluke, or was the rookie of the year the fluke? And I want to say last year was not the fluke for Corbin Carroll. I think what we saw last year, even what we saw in 2022, shows you Corbin Carroll is a nasty elite player and he should be fine in Major League Baseball. But what he's done this year should raise a red flag, especially if he's never able to turn it around this season. It would make me question as to whether this is just the player that we're getting for the next few years. But at the end of the day, even if this is the 2024 Corbin Carroll, I would be okay at the end of the season, just scraping and scrapping this entire season and just saying, you know what, let's get back to the lab in the offseason and let's pray Corbin Carroll can bounce back next year, because this was a guy that crushed all the pitchers he saw on the minor league level. This is a guy that crushed everything he saw the first 180 games of his career, 2022 and 2023. Like, Corbin Carroll, every step of the way has been a stud, has been an absolute superstar. And that's why this season has been so weird, so confounding, because we know the player and the talent that Corbin Carroll is, but if he's never able to turn it around, it's hard for me to believe that that D-backs offense can reach the next level, reach the next ceiling. And I still think this D-backs team can be good this year, especially if you get that rotation healthy, some changes to the bullpen. I think this D-backs team can be very good, still be a postseason playoff team, but I don't think they could be a World Series contender. I think a healthy D-backs team can make the playoffs because their rotation can be strong, their offense can do just enough. But the offense that we saw the first couple weeks of the season, I don't think that offense is coming back unless Corbin Carroll finally breaks out of this season long slump. And if he's not able to do that, then it's hard for me to believe the D-backs will ever have a championship level offense. Next question I have: why are there so many days off? I feel like every time I look at a D-backs lineup, there is someone else sitting, whether it's Ketel Marte in today's game, who, listen, I know he said his body has been stiff a little bit recently. Uh, Still, he probably could have played. I've seen Christian Walker sit a couple times in the last month. I've seen Gabriel Moreno sit in today's game a day after hitting a home run. Like, that's really where the crux of this question started. Like, Gabriel Moreno, a day after hitting his first home run of the season. Why is he sitting on the bench? We saw this earlier this week with Jake McCarthy. Hits a home run, then sits the next day. I feel like there are just too many days off in general for a lot of these D-backs players. Like, for how much the offense has struggled, I feel like I've seen too many games where we're missing a Gurriel, we're missing a Blaze, we're missing a Marte, we're missing this guy or that guy. And Tori's always like, we needed to give him a breather. He needed a schedule off day. But it's like we're 15 games in the season. Why do guys need days off? I think Major League Baseball players, unless you're hurt, you should probably be playing every single day. If you're healthy, I think you should probably play over 150 games in the season because you're getting paid millions of dollars and you should play every single day. And also because the fan experience, like a guy goes to the ballpark, a kid goes to the ballpark, might be the one chance that they get to see you. So that's another reason why you should play every day. But D-backs, way too many off days, and also way too many off days when I feel like a guy is coming off a really good game. There's been too many times this season where I've seen someone go off in a game, and then the very next day, Torey Lavella's like, we had to get him a rest. He had to sit down. Too many off days for these players. They get paid a lot of money, and I think they need to play probably a little bit more when you're making millions of dollars. So for the D-backs, the question I have is, why are there so many off days? Now, I got a couple more questions that I want to ask the D-backs, but I think I'm going to save them for segment number 3. But one thing I won't save is me telling you about Prize Picks. No gatekeeping here because my favorite daily fantasy sports app is Prize Picks. Spring training is over and baseball season is officially underway. Don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond in your Prize Picks entries. Whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs, take your pick of more or less and add them to your Prize Pick entry today. Get in on the playoff action and win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks as you and the world's best players take the game to a new level during basketball's postseason. Whenever I see Nuggets versus Wolves, give me Jokic over on points, Ant over on points, and when that hits, I love seeing money in my pocket. And if you want to see money in your pocket, download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the app, all lowercase, Locked On MLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks, pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Welcome back into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, and let me ask you two more tough questions about the D-backs this season before we do a little preview of Pfaadt versus Andrew Abbott. And the next question I want to ask you guys is, do the D-backs become sellers this season? I think it's a little bit early to ask this question for the Arizona Diamondbacks because, yes, they are 20-23 on the season, 3 games below 500. But like as we always say, D-backs, surprisingly, once again, they lose the game and they move up in the standings. They are now 1 game back of a wild card. So despite all the struggles that we talk about with the offense and the rotation not being healthy and this crappy bullpen, despite all that, all the issues, all the problems, all the frustrations that we've seen with the D-backs this year, they're still just one game out of the wild card spot. And that's why it's still way too early to say this team should be sellers. Now, if we get to June, if we get to late June, if we get to early July, if we get close to that trade deadline, the D-backs are a below 500 team and they're like 7 games, 6 games back of a wild card, then we can definitely have that discussion because there are interesting pieces that the D-backs could trade off and maybe get something of value back. Jordan Montgomery on his little 1 year deal, I'm sure a contender would love to add him to the rotation. Eugenio Suarez, he has not swung the bat well this season, but still a really good defensive player, veteran. Someone might want to take a swing on him. Don't think we'll get much back in return, but Monty might get us something back. Jock Peterson, Randall Grichuk, I think they're both on 1 year deals. Like there are a few interesting expiring veterans on this D-back squad that I think other teams would be interested in acquiring. Are we getting number one prospects? Probably not, but if the D-backs do become sellers, there are players on this team that they could sell off and at least get a little bit of return on value. But for the most part, way too early to have that conversation. Way too early, probably, for even me to ask the question. I just want to bring it up. The D-backs continue to play below 500 baseball, and they're a few games back. Once we get to the deadline, then I think the tone of this D-backs team will change. But right now, they're still too committed coming off the World Series appearance. They still have a ton of talent on this roster. And without a lot of that talent being healthy, I think it's too early to say, let's become sellers. If anything, the D-backs should go the other way and try to upgrade this bullpen. If you can, it's probably going to be tough because Eugenio Suarez was your swing piece in the offseason, but you kind of need to upgrade third base. Eugenio, I love as a defensive third baseman, but offensively, he has not been good this season. So D-backs way too early to become sellers, but never too early to become buyers. And then the final question I want to ask, is it time to switch out Logan Allen? Let's be serious, guys. He had a nice little run for the D-backs. I know he lowered his ERA after tonight's game, but still did not love his outing for the D-backs tonight. And recently, he had just not been as effective recently. I just don't trust him. It feels like every time he comes in with inherited runners now, they end up scoring. I need Logan Allen to come through when he comes in with a jam. I feel like he never gets the D-backs out of a jam ever. And that's really frustrating to see because at times I'm like, yeah, the starter left with some runners on, but if Logan Allen can come through, it'll still look like a good day for our starting pitcher. But Logan Allen ends up giving up those inherited runners to his starter or whatever previous pitcher was in the game. And then after that, Logan Allen usually likes to tack on an earned run or two to his own ERA. So, Allen, I think I'm ready to move on. There's better pieces in AAA or out there on the waiver wire, out there somewhere on the trade market. So Logan Allen, I think I wouldn't be too mad if the D-backs said, you know what, I don't know if this experiment is going to continue to work, but he's not the worst D-backs reliever right now. So I think he'll probably stick around for at least a little while longer. And then actually, oh no, this isn't a question. I thought I had one more question, but it was actually yesterday's question that I didn't delete. So let's talk about D-backs versus Reds. We got Brandon Pfaadt versus Andrew Abbott. Pfaadt last season pitched against the Reds and was fine. 11.1 innings pitched, 5 earned runs, and 11 strikeouts. So 5 earned runs is not too bad over those innings pitched. That's about a 3.97 ERA. 11 strikeouts and 11 innings. You like to see that as well. But the big issue for Pfaadt last year against the Reds, of those 5 earned runs, 4 of them came via the home run. And we know Pfaadt last year loved to give up the long ball, gave up a ton last season, 13 home runs allowed just on his fastball last year. But look at the numbers this season. Last season, 327 average allowed on that fastball. This year, 226 average allowed on that fastball. With his sweeper, those are his two go-to pitches. His 3 secondary pitches still aren't super effective, and they weren't effective last season. But this year, his fastball has been way better than what it was last year. It was the pitch that he liked to throw the most that was not effective at all for him last year. But this year has been a different story. In half of Pfaadt's starts, he's delivered a quality start, which means he goes at least 6 innings of 3 earned runs or less. He's been very good. this season for the D-backs, and I think he will finish the year with like a mid-3 ERA with a bunch of strikeouts. I think Pfaadt is coming. I think he's continuing to get better as the season progresses, and I would love to see where he ends up at the end of the year. The D-backs, after game 2, did break one of their streaks of they had like 8 straight games of getting a home run. They broke that in game 2. Hopefully, they can restart that streak in the finale against the Reds. One of the ways they could do that is delivering a big home run with runners in scoring position. The D-backs, the last 2 weeks, if you don't count tonight, have been awful with runners in scoring position. 226 average the last 2 weeks for runners in scoring position. And it just hasn't been good enough with a lefty in Andrew Abbott on the mound tomorrow. Hopefully, the D-backs can score some runs because they have been way better against lefties this season. Expect Randall Grichuk in the lineup and expect potentially Blaze Alexander in the lineup as well. That's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Come back tomorrow for more Diamondbacks news coverage and insight. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Doses.